Some of the principal causes of blindness, in addition to river blindness and trachoma, are diabetes-related conditions, glaucoma, macular degeneration, and corneal disease. In short, there are a lot of people with cornea disease and not many cornea tissue donors. So, if Dr. Sophie Deng's work succeeds, her work at Jules Stein and with CIRM projects, that shortage of donors may not matter, because cell-based therapy could change the whole dynamic, and culturing stem cells might be able to restore a corneal surface. So Dr. Sophie Deng will tell us all about that prospect.
Good morning. Thank you very much for including me in this fantastic symposium. And I'm so glad that Ms. McDonald shared her touching story, because it is the patient I heard who inspired me and many other corneal surgeons going to research to improve the current therapy. Before I begin my talk, I want to share with you to review the anatomy of the eye so you know exactly what I'm talking about, limbal stem cells. So when you look at the mirror, hopefully what you see a pupil and iris. And the reason you see that because you see through a clear cornea. And behind the cornea is anterior chamber and the iris. Behind it is the lens. Let's see the black hole here is the pupil. And behind is the features, and the retina is like behind this area. This is where Dr. Clayton's research focus on to rescue the rotting cones. And the limbus is the junction between the conjunctiva and the cornea. And advance the slides. So this is the structure of the cornea. The front is the skin of the cornea is lined by epithelium. The bulb of the cornea is stroma, and the most inner layer is endothelium. Each layer has its own rules in the maintaining of the cornea transparency. The epithelium works like skin, protecting the cornea and also provide 60% of the refractive power. And the stroma is maintaining the stability and integrity of the cornea, and the endothelium is pump the fluid out of the cornea and keep the cornea dehydrated and from swelling. Cornea blindness is the second leading cause of blindness globally. It translated into more than 4 million people are blind in both eyes, and more than 23 million people are blind in one eye. In the developing world, stroma scar is the leading cause of blindness, and in the developing world, such as in the US, corneal edema is the leading cause of the blindness. As Ms. Morrison alluded, there's a shortage of corneal tissue for transplantation worldwide. Let me advance the slides. I would like to introduce 3 projects that are ongoing in my laboratory. The first one is to develop limbal stem cell therapy to treat limbal stem cell deficiency. What limbal stem cells are, they are a group of adult stem cells. They are corneal epithelial stem cells that maintain the hemostasis for corneal epithelium. Why is it important? That's why. In patients with mild sectoral stem cell deficiency, a sector of cornea is affected. But when the disease becomes more severe, the patient becomes blind. And you can see like this. Cornea is the most innervated organ in the body. So when there's a little scratch of the cornea, you feel severe pain in the eye. I mean, the pain in the butt is annoying, but the pain in the eye is severe. Not only that, as I mentioned, this patient become legally, can I reverse? There's something wrong with this control. Not only that they have pain, discomfort, the vision become decreased and they become functionally blind at the end stage. Also, the patient become very disfiguring. Of course, the cause of this limbal stem deficiency could be genetics, which account only for 5% of the cause. Majority of patients, more than 90% of patients, are due to secondary injury. That's including surgery of the eye, chemical burns, and even contact lens wear is part of the reason that patient develop limbal stem cell deficiency. How to treat this disease? Cornea transplantation does not treat limbal stem cell deficiency. As you alluded, the graft is in the central cornea. The limbus, which harbor the limbal stem cells, is outside of the graft area. Therefore, the limbal stem cell deficient patient, when they receive the graft, that's what you see. They do not survive. Because this is stem cell deficiency disease, so intuitively, replacement or replenish of the stem cell would be the goal. It's been shown that autologous transplantation achieved the best outcome. And in 1997, the therapy is developed. Cell therapy is biopsy of 2 by 2 millimeters of tissue and grow them in culture and transplant it back to the eye and reconstruct the ocular surface. But then the approved therapy has a disadvantage. First, it contains animal products. It requires bovine serum and mouse feeder cells. And also, this only applies to mostly unilateral disease, which means that only one eye it can be treated. The limitation of this therapy is that there's no standard to evaluate the quality of the culture, and also there's no method to quantify the in vivo function of the stem cell. Therefore, there's no way you can compare the outcome of different approaches. To address this question, our laboratory first to develop a safer manufacturing process that eliminates all animal product, is Xenobiotic-Free and feeder-free. In addition, we utilize an amniotic membrane which is already being used in ophthalmology, and so that the culture and final product can be transplanted by a regular cornea specialist. So this will allow for wider distribution of this product to outside of major medical center. More importantly, we also established assay to really quantify the amount of stem cell in the culture, and have this assay also can elucidate this exactly cellular composition of the culture. Therefore, this standardized method can be used to quantitatively measure the quality and efficiency of different limbal stem cell culture methods. The other question, as alluded, is the limitation of how can we know that it's successful. And returning to in vivo confocal microscopy, which is an in vivo imaging system can image live corneas. And that's what they look like. The power of this modality is imaging live tissue, but also the resolution is extremely high. You can see the single cell level. So you can easily image the front, the superficial layer of the cell, to the basal layer of the cell, to the different junction, like cornea and conjunctival junction of the area where the limbal stem cell is located. So when we look into different eyes with different disease severity from early to intermediate to late, and we do see that indeed the morphology always change in these eyes, even in the earlier stage, in the central cornea and also in the limbus. And we are able to quantify this morphology in terms of the cell density, the thickness of epithelium, and the nerve density in this disease process. And they use this kind of parameter to really quantify the in vivo function of the limbal stem cells. One interesting finding along the way is that often when we diagnose limbal stem cell deficiency is by looking at the eye and say, oh, that looks like limbal stem cell deficiency. So as such in this patient on the left, this patient had injury at birth, and then he had already to fail cornea transplant. My definition, my current diagnostic criteria, this patient has total limbal stem cell deficiency. But with this advanced imaging technique, we are able to find clusters of normal limbal epithelial cells in this eye. What it means is that the new technique we develop may be able to locate residual normal limbal stem cells that can be expanded in culture. And this capability then expand the indication of this therapy to not just patient with one eye disease, but patient with disease in both eyes. So what we envision in the future for limbal stem cell therapy and what we're developing in our group is that we need to develop a culture system that is efficient to produce enough amount of stem cell to repopulate the entire eye. And it should be safe, meaning that there's no contamination of animal products. And it should reach a larger patient population, which means that we not only can treat patients with one eye disease, but also treating patients with both eye disease. What it translated to is 80% of patients with limbal stem cell deficiency. As alluded to the earlier talk, is that how expensive it is therapy. And we do a calculation. In fact, this therapy have an 80% reduction of what is cost now for the standard of care for this disease in the US, which is allogeneic cornea transplantation, limbal stem cell transplantation. And average is about $100,000 over 3 years period of time. Of course, the verdict will be how effective is this treatment. And we yet to go on to clinical trial. We're on pace to submit an R&D next year, and hopefully we'll be able to initiate a phase 1 clinical trial in the very near future. In the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you 2 other projects ongoing, try to develop new cell therapy for other corneal diseases. One is for endothelial dysfunction. Well, I mentioned that the endothelium is the most inner layer of the cornea, but don't get it wrong, this is not the vascular endothelium you know about. This is the cornea endothelium. When it's deficient, that's what you see on the right panel. The cornea becomes swollen, patient become blind. In 2015, close to 80,000 of cornea transplants were performed in the US, and more than half of them are due to the endothelial dysfunction. There's an evolution in the field of cornea transplantation over the last decade. In the old days, what we do is a cookie cutter, define the entire thickness of the donor cornea and then suture onto the recipient eye. Over the last 10 years, we changed to work towards selective cornea transplantation. What it means is that we only transplant or replace the layer that does not work. They include endothelial keratoplasty, which only replace the endothelium. And if the stroma is the problem, then replacing the stroma tissue will be the only tissue that replaced from the recipient. The reason why, because this patient do much better. The survival rate is much higher than the traditional full-thickness cornea transplantation. I want to share with you one of the latest development in the field of cornea transplantation is called DMAC, desiccated membrane endothelial keratoplasty. And what you see is initially the donor endothelium is peeled off, and then in the recipient, the diseased layer is removed. Then this donor tissue, which is stated in the trypan blue so they can see it because it's transparent, is loaded in the lens injector and then injected into the eye. This membrane is only 15 microns thin, which is thinner than paper. So this is injected into the anterior chamber, and very carefully this tissue is unfolded, and somehow this tissue by nature they like to screw into like a cigar roll very tightly, and the endothelium facing outside, so make this surgery much more difficult and challenging to do. And one way to make this tissue unfolded properly so that the endothelial side facing inside the eye is to use a cannula to go into the interface, the unfolded tissue, using air bubble or using mechanical unfolding technique. And the tissue need to be centered as well. The center to create more edema on the other side. So after the tissue is centered, Then instead of using suture to secure the cornea, instead air bubble is injected under the graft and floated onto the recipient eye. Why we do this, why we torture us to go through all this pain to learn how to do the surgery, is because of this. The visual recovery is amazing. This is the same patient that did surgery on about in 2013, in the very early days of DMAC in the US, and 1 week later, her vision is corrected 2020. And there's no way the full thickness cornea transplantation can achieve this level, this speed of visual recovery. So, because this technique is available, how can we improve the endothelial keratoplasty? In the future, what we envision is that to manufacture these endothelial cells in culture and package them into a cell sheet so that they can deliver to the surgeons to be transplanted. It sounds pretty easy, but it's really challenging because over 40 years, it's extremely difficult to grow these endothelial cells. By patches 1, and the cell looks like a fibroblast-like because the endothelial mesenchymal transition. It's not only until the last several years the new method has been developed in our laboratory, we're able to pass these cells to patches 10 now, and that's what it look like. In patches 6, it still look very pretty and look like endothelial-like cells. So what it translates into is one fetal cornea can produce 450 corneal lenticles that's suitable for transplantation. And from one young donor cornea can produce 200 of this type of corneal tissue for transplantation. In the last 2 minutes, I would like to share with you this really newly developed project in our laboratory is using stem cell-based treatment for stromal scar. As I alluded earlier, in the developing world, the stromal scar is the leading cause of blindness. And in those countries, they don't have eye banks, they don't have people to donate tissue, and most people go blind because they don't have the facility to restore the vision using cornea transplantation. So the new finding from James Vanderberg's group at University of Pittsburgh, and they found that actually the limbal mesenchymal cells has the capacity to reduce the stromal scar. And the collaborator of a group in LV Prasad in India, they already do a field transplantation and showed indeed the same phenomena, same function can be observed in human. And the very recent finding from his group showed that you may not need the stem cells themselves, you may need the derivatives of the stem cells, and they might have the same function. If this is the case, then this treatment can be developed and can be feasible to deliver to the developing countries without any eye banking, without any laboratory, and without any dry ice to store the stem cells. That would be fantastic. So we just began a collaborative effort with James Vanderberg and to further develop this treatment so that he can treat corneal blindness in a developing country. So what's in the future in terms of corneal regeneration? Because the success of selective corneal transplantation, that allows for selectively to regenerate each layer of the cornea for transplantation for restore the corneal transparency. The old model that we have now, one donor to one recipient, will be replaced by one donor for multiple or maybe thousands of recipients so that we don't require a donor source. The current mode of eye banking, which is go to the room, collect the tissue and the exam tissue, pass them for transplantation, that model will be replaced by manufacturing of different layers of corneal tissue and to treat different corneal disease. So that's how we envision for the next generation of cornea transplantation. And last, I would like to thank my group. Really have done all the work, and my collaborator, and of course the funding from CIRM. And the limbal stem cell project was funded at its infancy, and they're very excited we're on track to complete the study and to submit the IND application by next year. And also, of course, the CIRM Alpha Clinic at UCLA, they give us tremendous support and help to get our pre-IND study completed on time. And thank you for attention.